I mean, looking at today's headlines, if you thought that Ambassador Gordon Sondland's testimony in the penultimate hearing yesterday, if you thought that was as bad as it can get in terms of confirming a quid pro quo, which, of course, is not only impeachable, it's potentially criminal, directly implicating the president in ordering that scheme and directly implicating a whole bunch of other very senior officials, including the vice president, as being in on that scheme. I mean, if you thought yesterday's testimony was terrible for whatever defense they are ultimately going to try to mount in this impeachment, today there was another hearing. And today, Gordon Sondland's bombshell testimony from yesterday continued banging around inside this scandal. And Sondland today honestly continued to do more damage by, among other things, at one point, shriveling up the Republican committee counsel, the Republican committee lawyer who was supposed to be there all day doing all the hard questioning for the Republicans. Basically, a little hangover from Gordon Sondland today ended up shriveling him down to a dust mote and making him blow away. He just disappeared. And that happened because at Gordon Sondland's closed-door deposition, the deposition he gave behind closed doors before his bombshell public testimony yesterday, he had said this in that deposition. He had said, quote, "When Dr. Hill left her post to leave the government, I happened to drop by her office to say goodbye to her. I knew she was leaving, I think in a few days or a week. I was at the White House for some other unrelated reason, and I dropped up and we sat and had coffee. And she was pretty upset about her role in the administration, about her superiors, about the president. She was sort of shaking. She was pretty mad." Now, the Dr. Hill he's talking about here is someone we've all now met, Dr. Fiona Hill, who testified at this hearing today. Does she seem to you like a person who gets shaky, who gets uncontrollably emotional, so much so that men around her in the workplace worry about her fragile emotional state? Does that ring for you? Gordon Sondland told this tale in his closed-door deposition about really how shocked he was by just how uncontrollably emotional she was in front of him. She was really just sort of shaky and out of control. Really? Here's how it went. Gordon Sondland being questioned here by Republican committee counsel and ultimately by Republican members of Congress on the committee. Question, she was mad? Answer, yeah. Question, is that the first time you saw her mad? Answer, first time I've seen her like that, yeah. Question, she wasn't mad at you. No, she gave me a big hug. Question, and what did she relate to you? Answer, she was just upset about everything having to do with the Trump administration. She was upset at the president. She was upset with Ambassador Bolton. She was upset at a lot of things. I mean, she was it was very unusual. I mean, I've never seen her like that. I mean, it does actually seem believable that he's never seen her like that. That actually does ring for me, that he's never seen her like that. But he continued along these lines in his deposition. Question, she was railing against President Trump? Yes. Railing against Ambassador Bolton? Yes. Dissatisfied with her role? Answer, I don't know she said that. Question, well, what else did she say? What can you tell us? Answer, I sat and listened. I was trying to be a little bit of a shoulder, and I wished her well. As I said, I gave her a hug. Wait, I thought you said she gave you a hug. Question, were you surprised by this? Answer, a little bit, yeah. Because as I said, I've never seen her that emotional. Ahem. That was the testimony of Gordon Sondland behind closed doors. Now, who gave who the hug now, sir? You're being just a shoulder for her to cry on? Who was this little lady who was so emotional? It was so good. You were there as a big guy to give her a shoulder to shake and cry on. Who's that you're talking about? Can we meet her? We got to hear from her directly today, and watch.
He testified about some sort of coffee he had with you on your last day. He indicated you were upset, and you were upset with Ambassador Bolton and upset with the way things are going.
And I had a couple of testy encounters with him. One of those was in June 18, when I actually said to him, who put you in charge of Ukraine? And, I'll admit I was a bit rude, and that's when he told me the president, which shut me up. And this other meeting, it was about 15, 20 minutes, exactly as he depicted it was. I was actually, to be honest, angry with him. And, I hate to say it, but often when women show anger, it's not fully appreciated. It's often, pushed onto emotional issues, perhaps, or deflected onto other people. And what I was angry about was that he wasn't coordinating with us. Now, I actually realised, having listened to his deposition, that he was absolutely right, that he wasn't coordinating with us because we weren't doing the same thing that he was doing. So I was upset with him that he wasn't fully telling us about all of the meetings that he was having. And he said to me, but I'm briefing the President, I'm briefing Chief of Staff Mulvaney, I'm briefing Secretary Pompeo, and I've talked to Ambassador Bolton. Who else do I have to deal with? And the point is we have a robust interagency process that deals with Ukraine. It includes Mr. Holmes, it includes Ambassador Taylor as the chargé in Ukraine, it includes a whole load of other people. But it struck me yesterday when you put up on the screen Ambassador Sondland's emails and who was on these emails, and he said, these are the people who need to know, that he was absolutely right, because he was being involved in a domestic political errand. And we were being involved in national security foreign policy, and those two things had just diverged. So he was correct, and I had not put my finger on that at the moment, but I was irritated with him and angry with him that he wasn't fully coordinating. And I did say to him, Ambassador Sondland, Gordon, I think this is all going to blow up, and here we are.
And here we are. At which point the Republican Committee Counsel, gentleman there on the right with Devin Nunes, who's supposed to be doing all the hard questioning for the Republicans. At this point, Devin Nunes took over, kind of took the Republican Committee Counsel off the job, and he started asking his own questions instead, almost immediately. Because, you know, if you are the Republican Committee Counsel who keeps eliciting testimony like that about the president and the people who were working for him and the scheme that he was running, for which he's now getting impeached, I mean, that's probably not the kind of testimony they hired you to elicit from witnesses. I mean, what did he think he was going to get from Fiona Hill when he questioned her about why Gordon Sondland said that she was a crying, shaking little lady who was so out of control and he had to comfort her and give her a shoulder to cry on? I mean, she had already expressed through her counsel objection to that characterization. So when he asks her what really happened there, did he not know what she was going to say? Because what she just laid out is that what the president was having all of his folks do was a domestic political errand that was getting in the way of national security and foreign policy. Would you like more? I mean, alongside everything else that just happened there, we also, I mean, right there at the questioning of the Republicans' lawyer, we had Fiona Hill destroying Gordon Sondland, right, in every way, except for the fact that she just bolstered and attested to the most explosive thing in Gordon Sondland's own testimony from yesterday, which is that while he was doing this domestic political errand for the president, trying to get Ukraine to help the president with his reelection effort, while he was carrying out that domestic political errand, which was at the expense of U.S. national security and foreign policy, he was doing that domestic political errand with the full knowledge and involvement of the president and the White House chief of staff and the secretary of state. Yeah, they are all in on it explicitly. They're all in on Gordon's little domestic errand, which he's been ordered to carry out by the president himself. I mean, just like you saw on the front page of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch this morning, right? It was no secret. Everyone was in the loop, following Trump's orders for the quid pro quo. I mean, that was this incredibly damning testimony that Sondland gave yesterday, which will undoubtedly be seen, I assume, will be seen as the apex of at least this round of public hearings in the impeachment inquiry. And substantively, today, we get this senior expert, nonpartisan, nails national security official confirming that worst and most damning stuff that was delivered yesterday by goofy Gordon Sondland. So, I mean, in terms of the impact here, you can choose your messenger. You can choose who you like here and who seems like the credible person. But on the substance, they are both confirming the same thing in terms of the president ordering it being a quid pro quo, and everybody at the highest levels knowing all about it while it was happening. Now, that has consequences in terms of what happens next and whether these other senior administration officials who have been named here, whether they're going to get questioned, whether documents that might shed light on their involvement are going to get going to be obtained by the committee. We'll have more on that later, including talking with a member of the committee that's been pursuing this matter.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.